Welcome everyone to our fourth session together. We're looking into the story of Eden, that is the garden park of Eden. And we have already ventured into the third chapter in the book of Genesis. And we're looking at it from two aspects. From the ancient point of view from which the story comes of Mesopotamia, and we're also looking at it from the biblical writer's point of view. And where we had left off in our last session is the serpent. Now, just to review a little bit of it, instead of just reading the verses, all of a sudden, we realize, that is, that the man and the woman are naked, but they have no shame. They have no judgment on their nudity. And then all of a sudden, a serpent appears. And the serpent is the shrewdest of all the living creatures that Yahweh God had made according to the story. And now he's going to take up a conversation. And what we normally find missing when we're reading it in English is we think that the conversation is strictly between the serpent and the woman. But it's not. The word you there is masculine plural, which means that the man is there with the woman talking to the serpent that was probably wrapped around the tree, and he's talking to both of them, addressing both of them, but has turned toward the woman, but not excluding the man. So every place you see the word you, when reading it, you got to picture this. And where I left off is we're going to go behind the scenes here. And let me read a little bit of it. Where all of a sudden, the serpent lets out the truth. And he says, God knows that in the day that you will eat of this tree, your eyes will be opened. And you will be like God, perceiving good and bad. Then it says, now when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating. Now that word good for eating, it's a very strong word, and it's the word shapira in Aramaic, which means something that is absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. The word is beautiful. In fact, in the creation story of the first chapter, when it refers to everything that God had made, it was good, exceedingly good. The word good there means beautiful. So fantastic you can't move your eyes away from it. It was beautiful. But now it's talking about the fruit of the tree. So we can't use the word beautiful. The word good applies, but you were talking about food. So the word scrumptious fits in here. In other words, the fruit on this tree was scrumptious looking. That's why it's using the word shapira. Really scrumptious. And then it says, and pleasurable or desirable, which means it is so powerful it forms a lust in you to want to partake of this fruit. The desire means it's a strong lust, but not evil. It means like when you see a real ripe fruit hanging from a tree, a ripe one. Whereas most of the ones we buy in the stores are not ripe. They've even been picked before they're ripe, fully developed. So you got to get the idea what's taking place inside the woman. Oh my gosh, she's saying, look at that tree. It is utterly so, the fruit on it is so scrumptious looking. It's creating this tremendous lust in me to eat of it. So she saw that everything looked desirable about it. It was delightful, blissful to look at it. So all those three things are working in her, which is natural. So she took of its fruit and ate. So she also gave some, listen to this next one, she gave some to her husband who was with her. Why people skip over that, I don't know, but they do. Who was with her? That proves it. He was there the entire time, watching and listening. And he took of the fruit. Then after she ate it, nothing happened to her. So it says he ate. Then all of a sudden it says, then their eyes were open. Both of them at the same time. And they perceived that they were naked. Now, before they saw they were naked, but there was no judgment on it. Now they see their nakedness, and there's judgment with it. Oh, we need to cover up. The differences between us needs to be covered. This is the birth of civilization, the beginning of judgment, of discernment. So what did they do? They went and fastened together fig leaves and made for themselves loincloths. That's all they made from the fig leaves. They just covered the area around the waist. Not the rest, just there. Because now they had a judgment on their nudity. And they had to cover it. This is also the birth of culture. The beginning of culture. Of covering more than just protection from heat. This has nothing to do with the heat. It's just that this should be covered. A judgment. That's why what they made was loincloths. And the leaves, the fig leaves, were very large, especially in that area. Very large leaves. And they fastened it. And it's showing the awakening of the conscience and making and judgment and discernment and perception. This is all this is saying. And this is what it's saying here. Now the scene is changing. And all of a sudden, the serpent is still probably wrapped around the tree, or he slithered off, and he's with them. Slithered off the tree, but is with them. All three are together. Now there's a change in the story. And it says in the 8th verse here, then they heard the sound of Yahweh God, who was walking in the garden paradise during sunset. In other words, the sun was setting. It was in the decline of the day. Literally, that's what it says in Aramaic. It says in the decline of the day, which means at sunset. You can also say in the cool of the day. You could say toward evening. All of this, I just translated during sunset. So the man and his wife hid themselves from before Yahweh God among the trees of the garden park. Why would they hide themselves? Well, let's go on to the next verse. Then Yahweh God called out to the man and said to him, Earthling, where are you? Remember, Adam does not have a name yet, although the word there is Adam. It means the groundling, the earthling. He could have said, man, where are you? But it's not. He says, the earthling. Where are you? In other words, God had been walking through the garden park here, and he went to the spot where usually the man was. And so he turns and says, Earthling, where are you? You deserted your post. Now, this is rhetorical speech. In fact, from what we're going to learn from here on, it's all rhetorical speech. In other words, we refer to God as omniscient, all-knowing. Oh, didn't he know what had happened? Of course he did. But this is a story. And this is why, you see, in the Near East, your ancient potentates who maybe owned a garden park, and I told you that the great Assyrian king Sennacherib had built the ancient garden, not the Garden of Babylon. It should be the Garden of Nineveh. He had built it. We have the stone relief of this, and we have it written in the cuneiform. And your historians are doing more and more research on it now. So your potentates would have a garden, and in the cool of the evening, they would walk and go through the garden. So this is how it's picturing in story form. God is walking in his paradise that he had planted. Literally, God didn't plant anything, but in other words, the nature had brought it up. But God is being told as a human being and is coming into his garden, and the man is not at his post. So he says, where are you? And all of a sudden the man comes out from hiding behind the tree, and he replied, I heard the sound of you in the garden park, and I realized that I was naked, so I hid myself. Now, why would he do that? You see, culture had already been developed when this story was written. Because in the ancient Near East, many times in some of the practices of the other religions of the time that worship the gods and goddesses, they would sometimes appear nude. And in fact, when we get to the Mosaic Law and we read the Mosaic Law, there's one thing that the Mosaic Law had forbidden, and that is there were to be no steps in regard to a sanctuary where the priest would have to climb up, and perhaps you could see under the undergarments. They forbid steps. So nudity was something that was part of the Semitic culture. You had to cover nudity. And now this is why all of a sudden the man culturally realizes, I should not appear nude before Yahweh God. So that's why he said, I was naked and I hid myself. Now the real rhetorical speech begins. Then Yahweh God asked him, who showed you that you were naked? Who pointed this out to you? How come God didn't know that? Because this is a story. Who showed you that you were naked? Look here. Have you eaten of the tree that I commanded you not to eat from it? This reminds me of, it's just like us. It's like we've had chocolates in the house, and all of a sudden the child goes to the chocolates and eats them and has it all over his face. And we go up to the child and say, "Have you eaten of the chocolates I told you not to?" This is typical rhetorical speech. Who showed you? Who pointed this out to you? Have you eaten of that tree I told you not to? Well, he's covered up his nudity. So that means he's got a certain perception, a different perception of things. Of course. But the man has got to reply to it. I love what he says. He says, so the man said, "The woman that you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree, so I ate." Leave it to us, men, to blame it on the woman and to blame it on God. We won't take any responsibility at all in this. You know, if I hadn't gone to sleep and you had taken some of that out of me and made a woman out of it, I wouldn't be in this trouble right now. It's the woman you gave me. So both get blamed, the woman and God. You know, you should have left me alone. I would have been all right. And she gave me and I ate. God does not reply to it at all, nothing. He ignores it. So he takes what the man says and he turns to the woman. And Yahweh God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" In other words, he's looking for an explanation for her. What will you say now? What will you tell me? The woman replied, the serpent misled me, so I ate. In other words, the woman was telling the truth. She told the whole thing. In other words, I listened to what the serpent said. It sounded reasonable to me, so I went ahead and ate. She didn't lie and she didn't blame. And this seems to be the way of our thinking. Anything goes wrong, we look for blame first thing. And that's why the man replied, "Oh, the woman that you gave me, that's why I'm in trouble now." But the woman, no, didn't look for blame. She said, "Well, you know, the serpent misled me. I listened to him, so I ate." The woman was honest. So I ate. So what will God do? Then Yahweh God said to the serpent, so he's going to say, okay, now I got to deal with the serpent. And just think, that serpent was there the whole time to see all the reaction going on, all this emotion, all this frustration, and all this, oh my God, we're caught, and oh, we shouldn't have done it, and oh, no telling what was going on here. And the serpent stayed right there. And I always tell people when I have told this story, I said, had I been the serpent, I'd have just done my deed and got out of there. But no, he stuck around. I wonder how wise was this serpent. And by the way, I didn't mention this earlier in the session that we did before, and I haven't mentioned it now, but a talking serpent? A talking serpent? You see, in the Near East, we often heard about Aesop's fables, or Aesop's fables. These fables come from the Near East. You know, Aesop always has the animals talking. In the ancient Near East and in the Mesopotamian world, they had all these stories that the Greeks borrowed and changed and made, they did their spin on it. But in the ancient stories, the animals talked. Now, please don't confuse this with another story in the Bible when Balaam is on his donkey and the donkey turns and talks to Balaam the prophet, the seer, because that's something else altogether different. What that's referring to is Balaam is dreaming that he's on his donkey and the donkey sees an angel with a drawn sword and moves to the side of the road. But this is a dream that Balaam is having, and the donkey talks to him. But here, this is a story. And in ancient stories, they have the animals talking. So the reptile here, the serpent, is talking. And it's not walking either. It had no legs. It always slithered. So, and we'll get to that in a minute. So, he's going to talk to the serpent here. So he turns to the serpent, and Yahweh God says to the serpent, upon this that you have done, cursed are you from all the tame animals and from all the wild animals. On your belly will you slither, and dirt will you eat all the days of your life. And I will put hostility or hatred or something detestable. I will put hostility between you and the woman. And why the woman here? Now I have to explain this to you. And between your descendants and her descendants. They will trample your head, and you will strike at their heel. What is this describing? This is describing the typical ancient way of the custom and cultures. They eventually despised the serpent. They hated the serpent. Even though the serpent was used as a symbol, they hated the actual serpent itself. There was hatred between them. And even today, we don't like snakes. We don't like snakes at all. All the spins that were done on the serpent later on, that the serpent was Satan, that the serpent was the devil. Do you know that wasn't done until the 1st century BCE, when it was in the Book of Wisdom? That's where it's first time mentioned. And it was the writer that makes the serpent the devil. Up until this time, they never associated it with the devil at all, with an adversary. They just used the word serpent. But that's and then the Christianity built a whole doctrine about the devil and Satan and the serpent and all that, and put fear in people and created another god known as the devil and the serpent. No. This is just a story here. The serpent. And now it's going to crawl. What God is saying, he's not saying slithering, I'm cursing you, so now you once were walking and talking, and now you no longer will talk and you no longer will walk. No. What he's saying is, your constant state of slithering and eating dirt, that is your tongue darting out while you're slithering along, he said, which means eating dirt because it's going to touch the dust and all that. He says, that is a curse. Why even use the word curse? Because you see, in the Near East, when people get upset, they put a curse on it. Like when Jesus went up to the fig tree and there were no figs on it. And Jesus cursed the fig tree and said, may you never have any more figs on you. Already the fig tree had been picked dry. But in the Near East, they express their emotion that way, It's like going to the cupboard looking for some food, or to the refrigerator, and the wife hadn't gone shopping, and you look in the refrigerator and you express your disappointment by slamming the refrigerator door and say, may you never have food in you again. That's what they call cursing. In the Near East, they did cursing. Even I was brought up Italian style, and I remember people putting curses on people. And this is what it means here. He said, from now on, your state of movement, the way you slither, the way you eat dirt, is going to be considered a curse. This is what God was saying, but the serpent always slithered. So this is what it means here. God doesn't curse his creation. So, and God created the serpent. So he said, Anya, but what is this about the descendants? Well, there's always been a fight between human beings and serpents. Sometimes we've discovered we use some of the venom to do certain things with that comes from a serpent, comes from a snake. But in the ancient world, you have all this, the mixture of using the serpent symbol for renewal, for healing, for restoring. Even Moses used the serpent when they were in the desert and made a brass serpent and put it on a pole and put it that people could look at it. If they were bitten by a serpent, they could look at it and get some healing. So you see, it has a mixture. It's always a mixture with the serpent, the different means. It can mean wisdom, it can mean treachery, it can mean all kinds of things. But physically, here it's speaking physically. There'll always be hostility between human beings and the serpent. This is what it means here. God did not make the serpent slither. The serpent was made to slither. He didn't put a curse on it. But this word cursed is used, meaning they're going to look at your state of being as a curse. So, now he's going to turn to the woman. Now he's not going to curse the woman. He's going to awaken the woman to what new thing she is going to face. Something new that she did not know was going to happen. You see, you got to realize, and I know we've used the Garden of Eden story for all kinds of things, and one of the things we used it for is when we procreate, and the action of being procreation, we made it something evil and bad. This is not what the story is telling us. They were nude, and they weren't ashamed of it, and they were getting together and were one flesh before they ate of the tree. Now, what is God going to say to the woman? He's not going to curse her. He's going to show her now what's going to happen in her body, something brand new. And we will continue with this in our next session of looking at the Garden of Eden.